There he is. Go in here in just a moment. Eric should be joining just now. There he is.
Andrew, how you doing?
Good. How are you? I'm having a little hard time hearing you. Are you away from your phone, or can you use your earbuds? I don't know if you have them or not, but
Yeah, I actually was using my headphone, but it looks like it wasn't great. Is that better?
it's a little better. Yeah, you just have to keep speaking up. That's all. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. I mean, listen, it's a crazy, surreal time, but I think what's surprising about this period of time is I've enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, which
That's good. Listen, little silver linings. That's what we're looking for. So that is absolutely wonderful. Eric, before I start with a few questions and so forth, I'm just going to run through a couple of little housekeeping items, if you don't mind. Would be great. So obviously today, talking to you, we're going to talk about Locke Hotels, what's going on in the UK, and all of that. And then tomorrow, Brigitte Breitenbach is talking here on our IG channel with Adam Williamowski of Street Sense, and he's their head of restaurants. He's talking about the concierge of the future. I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation. And then on Friday, we have the great Danny Meyer of Union Square Hospitality on with another one of our advisory board members, Sarah Eustace. And that's at 5:15 p.m. Eastern time. So Eric, that means you're going to have to stay up late with a drink, but that'll be good.
I would
It'll be a good.
miss Danny Meyer. I'm a massive
Yeah. I mean, you could have a late, a nightcap and watch Danny, and then you'll just fall right to sleep. It'll be lovely. So also want to thank Ivy by Go Moment, who is our presenting sponsor, and Raj Singh, the CEO there, has been super supportive of us, and he came on a couple of weeks ago. It was great, and he's going to be taking over our account and doing some interviews in June and July, which is lovely as well. So looking forward to that. Also want to thank RCCB Law and Hannah Lee Communications. Both have been massive supporters, and we're grateful. And finally, as I always say, if you want to throw in a few dollars, because we are at the moment revenue zero, you're welcome to, on our website, IL Congress, you go to digital events and you can see the link there for donating. So that would be great. And thank you for everybody who has donated. And it can be as little as $1 and as much as some people have done hundreds of dollars. It's wonderful. So thank you so much. We're really appreciative. All right. So Eric, wonderful to chat again. We don't know each other that well, but I was very impressed with your just with the brief chat that we had previously and what Locke Hotels is doing. So talk to us a little bit about, well, give us a teeny bit of background on you. Where'd you come from before, unless you were just sort of born at this age and started here, and then talk a little bit about Locke Hotels as well. Would be great.
Yeah, my 4-year-old is convinced that I was born at this age. So I was actually born in Los Angeles. My father was one of the lead architects for Walt Disney Imagineering. So we moved to Paris when I was 11, and I saw a piece of land turn into what's now Euro Disney, and I think that was quite a formative experience for me. My father and I butted heads because he was quite a strong individual, and I went into finance. I thought design and hospitality wasn't my thing, and I think about 10 years ago, I'd heard Klaus from Design Hotels speak, and that kind of was a pivotal moment for me. I mean, Klaus is always before his time. I mean, he was talking about how it was less about 4-star, 5-star, and 3-star, and more about what the experience means to you as an individual. And just because something has a lot of money thrown at it doesn't necessarily mean it'll command the price, and vice versa. Just because you didn't spend much money on delivering a hospitality experience, it didn't mean that you couldn't drive a huge rate. And that really resonated with me because I was investing in all types of stuff then, residential, student, hotels, but the types of hotels I was investing in and those that I was staying in, there was a big delta between the two. And that's really what kind of set me on this journey to really kind of pave a path for what kind of the hotel of the future could look like. And I think part of that, and it was a really collaboration with a few friends of mine, myself, Andrew Fowler, who's our head of acquisitions, Charles, who's our head of construction, and Merzak, who's our head of investments. And it was a brutal path. I mean, we had no money. We just had this great idea. And the first Locke opened in 2016 here in East London, and it's been an amazing adventure since. And we've had 3 other Locks open. We've got 7 more opening over the course of the next 12 months. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, tell us a little bit about Locke Hotels, because I think you have some interesting little original twists to what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about why are you different, and what are you doing with Locke? We'd love to learn that.
Yeah, listen, it's a great question. I mean, I guess a lot of your viewers are from the States. So the best analogy I could give for what Locke is it's if the modern lifestyle hotel movement and Airbnb actually, had a baby. That's basically, so it's really high design apartments coupled with these, sensory immersive common spaces, from cocktail bars, co-working, destination dining, to artisan grocery stores, a CrossFit studio, yoga studio. So every Locke we do is different. We go to great lengths to find the right interior designer for that specific Locke property, and the right food and beverage strategy and partner. We don't operate our own spaces. I'm a firm believer in the fact that great hoteliers make for terrible restaurateurs and vice versa.
No, that's interesting.
And so we've got, by this time next year, we'll actually have 4 different Locke properties in London. And the difference between each Locke property would be comparable to the difference between Hoxton, Ace, Soho House, and the Standard. And so you may go to one and love it and hate the other. And that's okay with me, because really what really defines the Locke experience is the micro locality, coupled with the fact that every room is an apartment. You could stay there for a night, or you could stay there for a year.
So is each room, are all of your rooms, are they larger than average hotel rooms? Let's say an average hotel room, I'm just going to make this up for now. I mean, there is no average hotel room. 325 to 375 square feet here in the States is, let's say that's a normal hotel room, not a micro, not an extended stay, but in that range. Are yours bigger?
The answer is the first Locke property that opens was bigger. I mean, the average room sizes there were about 350 square feet. 350 square feet. What we realized was people spent all their time actually in the living quarters of the Locke room. So that would be kind of where the sofa, the dining table, the kitchen, that's where they spent all their time hanging out. There was very little time, if any, spent in the bed. And so we, in the few Locke properties that have opened since, we've actually made the room size a little bit smaller, but to the naked eye, they can't tell. And so the average room size now is kind of in the high 200s. But because of the way we design the rooms, the typical hotel room revolves around the bed. It's all about, how beautiful your headboard is, what your nightstand looks like, and what the pendant light looks like. And so the way we focus, we actually isolate the sleeping quarters, and really focus on the living quarters. And so it's kind of an optical illusion. A 30 square meter Locke unit looks bigger, a lot bigger than a 40 square meter, 50 square meter hotel room. But hey, next time you're in Europe, you'll have to come stay with us. And
yeah, you've turned totally into a European or a Brit, or whatever you want to call it, because you're like square meters. I mean, who uses meters? I mean, come on. Nobody does meters anymore. It's all about feet. Come on.
I know. I've been living here for 10 years. I've been ruined.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Listen, my sister's been over there for 25 years, so. We pretty much lost her to London. But in any case, no, that's wonderful. Very interesting. I like how you're putting all of these. I mean, you're very different, interesting, pieces that you're using, and you're not afraid to bring in, a co-working piece or a retail piece or things like that. I think that's amazing and very interesting. And I like also how each one is different. I think that's a real differentiator for you guys. Have you found that it's difficult to have all of these sort of disparate pieces other than just hotel rooms and a lobby, that you're doing other things because you're so creative? Is it difficult to keep everything working well?
Yeah, it's horrendous. But so listen, I mean, I think part of the reason for this was, and I'm not going to name any names, but I'll never forget one time I went to this hotel in Berlin, and it was one of the most spectacular hotel experiences ever because it was so unique. They had co-working, they had this kind of retail studio, they had this rooftop experience with this pool, and I remember thinking, this is unbelievable, and this is why I'm paying a premium to stay here. I mean, it was such a unique, memorable experience. And then when I went to the Barcelona branch, it was literally carbon copy of the Berlin experience, but with flowers. And I think kind of the thought process was, well, if we add a little bit of kind of Barcelona design palette, that's enough. And that was incredibly disappointing for me, because what was going through my mind is what makes this unique is the reason for why I'm staying here. I don't want to stay in another chain. And so I think from that time forward, it was approximately 5 years ago, we kind of set upon this mission to ensure that no two Locks are alike. And what's fascinating about this is that, I think with the traditional hotel, there's only so much you can do. I mean, it's kind of pretty formulaic. It's hotel room, restaurant, bar, and if you're really out of the box, maybe you've got some co-working and you add a design element. What's fascinating about the kind of the space that we're playing in is that the needs of the consumer who's staying 2 weeks is very different than someone who's staying for a night or two. And by creating this concept, we've kind of created this whole new demand that never existed. I mean, our average length of stay at our East London property is 10 days. And so if you think about kind of the daily habit of someone who's staying for us for 10 days, I mean, this individual typically, when they weren't staying with us, they'd wake up, maybe partake in some form of mindfulness. They'll wait 10 minutes in line for their third wave coffee. This is all pre-COVID, by the way. And then they'll go and work in some open plan kind of work setting. They'll eat something healthy for lunch, maybe via Deliveroo, maybe just walk 5 minutes. After work, they'll go to some form of Instagrammable space, spend some time with their buddies, and then they'll crash out of home watching Netflix. And what you find about...
Sounds like a nice day, by the way. I would love to have that experience right now. Love to.
Yeah, it sounded so simple until it was robbed from us.
Yeah, so simple until.
Yeah. And if you think back to that kind of 24-hour day, we're willing to depart from that 24-hour day when we travel for a day or two, but not much longer. We want our third wave coffee. We want, if we're into wellness, we want to continue our habit of Soul Cycle or Peloton or CrossFit, HIIT training. We want our farm to table dining, and very rarely do concepts integrate all of those elements under one roof. And so our whole approach has been, if someone is living in Dalston, which would be comparable to like Bushwick in New York, or living in Burlington Street, which would be our version of Abbot Kinney. What is it that traveler really wants under one roof? So it's convenient for them, but it's memorable, it's unique, and it reflects the locality. And it is absolute and utter brain damage on every property.
Yeah, I was going to say, so listen, a lot of the bigger hotel companies are very, they have many different brands and many different things that they're doing. And some of them I love and some of them I don't, but that's normal. I think everybody, has what they like, what they don't like, and so forth. But some of the things that they're very good and consistent on are, I would call out like Courtyard by Marriott or Hampton Inn or Hilton Garden Inn or Holiday Inn Express. Those products are extremely consistent. You know what you're getting, and a good part of the population, by the way, I would say a good majority of the population really enjoys that consistency, knowing what they're going to get, the lower level rates, sort of a self-service type of a atmosphere, and so you don't have to pay a ton. You know what you're getting, and it's very clean and it's great. that is an easy way. And I have a good friend who that's all he does is those kind of properties, a developer and owner like you are. And he only focuses on those, does not do any independent hotels. And he makes a lot of money doing that. And he constantly busts my chops and says, Andrew, you spend way too much time thinking about this kind of stuff. I mean, it's too much brain damage, too hard. There's a much easier way to make money. And my answer to him is, you're right. There is an easier way to make money. So those in the indie space, the boutique space, I think, not only pride themselves, but want to, use their creativity, use their ingenuity, and challenge themselves, I think. But I would even go farther in saying that you guys are particularly self-torturous to yourselves because of how far you're going. So, but I think it's interesting.
Listening to this, because they would probably echo your sentiment. Listen, what's fascinating about what you just said, Andrew, is if you actually think about it, pre-COVID, there was a purpose for brand. It provided clarity. It provided consistency. You kind of knew that if you were staying at a 5-star hotel, you would receive room service. There'd be some form of spa facility. There'd be some form of, kind of destination dining. But here's the fascinating thing. At least for the foreseeable future, that brand doesn't mean anything anymore. Because even the 5-star hotels are now saying, okay, we're not going to clean your room every day. The restaurant downstairs, we're actually going to close. Yet spa facilities, those are closed as well. And so in order to survive in the current era, a lot of these larger brands have had to kind of rip up their playbooks and say, okay, how do we respond? And what's fascinating about this is that if you kind of think about this in the here and now, in order to survive, you're almost encumbered by legacy. The larger you are, the harder it is to navigate these waters. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when the dust settles. I mean, listen, everyone's hoping for the vaccine to happen within the next few months, and this is all a moot point. But what happens if it isn't? What happens if we got another 18 months of this?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't think it's going to be a few months. I also don't think it'll be 18, but I think it'll be 10 to 12. That's just my guess. But I also think that in some ways you're right. It sort of goes a little bit to the point of people don't want to spend that mental energy to create something like you've created if they can do something simpler and make as much or more money doing it, right? I think in the same way, both for indie and for larger branded properties, human beings have a hard time fighting inertia. If it's set and it's been working well, why change it? Why do I have to do it? It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of effort. They don't want to change. They'd rather keep doing what they're doing. In this case, if you don't change and change quickly, even though it's only for I think, this is just my personal opinion, this is a limited amount of time, 8 to 10, 12 months. But if you want the business for the next 8 or 12 months, you better freaking change and change quickly and embrace it. It ain't gonna, you can sit and whine and bemoan yourself and drink until you pass out, but none of that's going to change, what's going on in our environment today, right? I mean, you might as well be proactive and get out there and do it.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I agree with you. I mean, we're really fortunate. Here in the UK, the government actually forced all hotels to close down. So the average occupancy for most hotels at this moment in time is 0%, unless you're catering to key workers or medical staff. We were fortunate because most of our units are apartments. We were actually able to cater to those who needed a place to live. And so in response to that, we're currently operating at 45% occupancy, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in the current climate is a godsend.
Hopefully that's close to break even somewhere,
Yeah, well, that's the beauty behind the model. We're not operating our own F&B spaces. People are only checking in, checking out once every 10 days. Actually, in the current climate, our average length of stay is something like 2 months because people are living there. And so there's really not much of it's not a very expensive model to upkeep. But I think one of the questions that people keep asking is, is the world going to be the same? And what it means for our hospitality sector is people and you've heard this before, people overestimate how much change will happen in a year, and they underestimate how much change will happen in 10 years' time. And if I were to And the way I see this impacting our sector is probably different than what most people are thinking. Everyone's talking about keyless entry and perspex barriers and the death of kind of the breakfast buffet. And those may happen. I mean, like, listen, those will definitely have to happen for the short term. And whether those happen for the long term are yet to be defined. But if you look back, I also believe that we're shaped by economic trauma. If you look at what happened in response to GFC, it did have a serious impact on the hospitality. If I were to ask you, Andrew, 12 years ago, while you were having, not to say you were, but while a lot of very wealthy people were sitting there having their beef Wellington, in a white cloth venue with chandeliers hanging, and you asked them, hey, listen, you'll be paying just as much, if not more, to dine in what looks like grandma's garage, they would have. And by the way, the type of food you'll be eating is, all parts of the animal, not just the fillet. You're going to be eating the rear end. They would laugh.
Everything.
And yet, in response to GFC, it didn't happen overnight, but that's what happened. I mean, the design palette and the F&B, the sensory experience, was an expression of people's response to the great financial crisis. It wasn't socially acceptable to eat in these lavish venues and flash cash. So in response to that, you saw the emergence of Ace, you saw the emergence of Hoxton, you saw the emergence of Soho House, and it took time for it to become mainstream, but that's what became the norm. And I think it's hard to believe that this isn't more traumatic than GFC. And so how this will influence design and F&B is yet to be seen. But we're kind of already seeing the possibilities of it. People are enjoying eating out in the park and spending time outside far more than they ever thought they would. I know I have. I mean, if you had asked me, hey, listen, Eric, you're not going to be able to travel, and all your favorite restaurants are going to be closed, I would have told you, I'm going to have a heart attack. That's it. I'm ending.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed this far more than I thought.
I agree with you. There are going to be major changes, and how that works, I don't know, but
definitely, definitely changes in our society, how we travel, how we interact with other people, and all of that. So I agree. Now, one of the people put on here a comment, which I sort of led me to a question that I was going to ask. And by the way, if anybody else has questions, we still have a few minutes left. Would love to ask Eric a question. Great. I can go on forever like this, but if you got questions, throw them up there. But they mentioned, hey, your Locke Hotels is focused on guests who are 2 weeks or more. I'm not sure if that's exactly accurate, but longer stay guests. And we've had a little bit of a in the past 5 or 10 years here in the U.S. And 2 companies that I know of out of Philadelphia actually have gone into sort of the upper upscale or luxury extended stay market. And up until now, there haven't really been that. I mean, there's select service hotels, there's upper upscale, there's luxury, boutique is somewhere in that range. But only recently have people been more focused on sort of what I would say the higher end extended stay market, where you're staying for a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever, but it's a hotel experience also, sort of combined those two. Sounds like that's what you guys are doing as well. Do you see a lot of that over in Europe? Are there other companies directly competing with you guys, or are you one of the first movers over there?
Listen, it's a great question. So first and foremost, we don't just cater to 2 weeks or longer. I mean, 25% of our client base only stay for a night, typically.
Okay.
So, listen, in response to that, if you really think about what we are, Airbnb raised awareness for that for the price of a hotel room, you can stay in an apartment. The challenge, when I'm actually a massive fan of Airbnb, I use it. We actually post, in addition to being on the typical OTAs, we actually use OTA or Airbnb as an OTA. But one of the challenges with Airbnb currently is lack of consistency. And basic consistency. I'm not talking about design consistency. I'm talking about Wi-Fi speed, blackout blinds don't work, no AC. You show up at 10 a.m. You can't check in until 3, and you got nowhere to drop off your bags. And so at this moment in time, our biggest competitor is kind of the mom and pop unit on Airbnb. And then you've got perhaps Sonder. But the difference between us and Sonder is that Sonder is just, design-led apartments. There's no common area experience to really allow guests to root into the locality. And so at this moment in time, the only competitor I can think of actually globally would be Zoku.
Say that again?
Zoku.
Oh, Zoku. Yeah. Okay, we know the Zoku guys. They're great.
I'm a massive fan of them. I mean, Hans is he's brilliant.
And Mark, they're great guys. I think you just said something very interesting, because neither of the groups here in Philly, or neither of the upper upscale extended stay guys here do a good job of an activated lobby gathering place. They have, it depends on the property, obviously. Some of them have a room, a gathering room, something. It's up on the upper floor somewhere. It might be 750, 1,000 square feet, maybe smaller, maybe a little larger. It's a place where you can gather with other guests, but only guests are allowed, often not non-guests, and it's not activated at all. So they've missed what I think is maybe one of the most important things about a great hotel, and it sounds like what you guys are doing is that, which is, I think, key. Not only having a great food outlet, but also an activated place where people can gather, not only your guests, but people from the neighborhood to come in and hang out and spend time.
I mean, here's the irony. The irony is that in a typical hotel, the average length of stay is 2 days. There's although you've got these really vibrant ecosystems within the ground floor, it's very unlikely that you're going to have even the time to interact with the locals. If you're staying for 2 weeks, you're going to be coping with some degree of loneliness unless you're there with someone. It's inevitable. And so the need for some form of activated common areas is actually higher. And so
very interesting.
Yeah, the experience is a critical part of our model. And I'll give an example. In the current climate where F&B has actually been shut down, from our perspective, we've seen that as an opportunity to reach to the consumer in their home. So we do things such as we've changed the coffee shops into artisan grocers so that the guests can come downstairs, pick up the items. We've collaborated with Michelin-starred chefs to create these recipe boxes so that once a week, the guests come downstairs, they get the recipe box, they go back to the room, and then we actually do a Zoom class for 2 hours.
That's awesome.
Where they can basically have this, 20 other people, and a mixologist shows them how to make this cocktail, and then after that, the Michelin-starred chef shows them how to put together this, 3-4 course meal, and it's really exciting. That's not something you can do at a hotel, and even in the best of times, that would have been a really memorable experience. And so this whole COVID experience is really getting us to think, what type of experiences can we forge for our guests that even in the best of times could have been amazing, let alone today? That's
wonderful.
We're doing yoga classes because, once again, the rooms are large enough to partake in yoga. So we'll have one of the yoga instructors doing a Zoom class with our guests so that they're partaking in yoga. And we see this, I mean, COVID's opened our eyes to the fact that we see this as kind of just the beginning. It's the tip of the iceberg. There's so many things you can do in an apartment that you just can't do in a hotel room, and being able to kind of blur those lines between the social activation that happens downstairs and what happens in the room, that's a very interesting place to play in. And I'm really excited for what that means for the future.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Before we go, there was one question on here that I wanted to bring to you, and I don't know if this is your specialty or not, but I want to get to it, which is, the question was, what do you think will happen to our spa business, or when will the spa businesses get back to, being able to serve guests? Do you have any inkling on that?
Yeah, listen, it's a difficult one. And it also, if you think about kind of the spa, it has an overreaching kind of what happens to yoga studios, what happens to CrossFit studios, what happens to gyms. So listen, I think when the dust settles, people People are going to like the escapism associated with the spa experience and kind of the quiet time, and they're going to like the community that is offered with, you know, the likes of SoulCycle and the gym. In the interim, I do believe that we're going to see this emergence of, you know, in-room wellness. Now, you know, and we're seeing that already through kind of the emergence of Peloton. But really, the way we are kind of interpreting that is everything that you could have done, or not everything, a lot of what you could have done within a gym, within a yoga studio, within a SoulCycle class, within a kind of a spa class, a spa studio, should be able to be done within an apartment. And so, you know, so creating kind of these Zoom classes, whether it's yoga, whether it's some form of CrossFit, whether it's, you know, some form of meditation, we're trying to partake in those. Now, the issue with the spa experience is the same issue as going to the hairdresser, which is typically incorporate some form of massage, some form of, you know, nail treatment. And so I think before this opens up into kind of open spaces, the way we're interpreting that is when, you know, when the dust settles, I think people are going to feel a little bit more comfortable doing it within the privacy, you know, whether it's nails, whether it's hair, whether it's massage, do it within the privacy of their apartment, in the living quarters, not in the sleeping quarters, then perhaps doing it in an open setting, just psychologically. There's just something about that. So,
interesting. Yeah, I'm ready to go back and get a massage, but I'm not sure when that's going to happen. My body's a whole bunch of knots right now. But anyway, listen, Eric, it's been wonderful speaking with you. I hope that you will consider, when we do have an event here in the U.S., that maybe you'll come back and visit some of your old pals and family in Los Angeles and join us, even before you do a Locke Hotel here. And if you want to come to the States and do one, I think Philadelphia would be a great place to do it. And I'd be happy to help search for a site. So well, there you go.
Watch the space. No guarantees, but I think 2024, 2025, 2026, that's probably when we'll be keeping eyes on the States. But in the interim, I'll definitely be there, Andrew. I'm a massive fan. Since the time we met to today, I've been watching the videos. Keep up the good work. I honestly love what you guys are doing.
Oh, thanks.
I wish there was more formats like yours. It's brilliant. Seriously.
Oh, thanks. I super appreciate that. That's very nice of you. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you on the other side. We got a bunch of other tomorrow and Friday great talks. Obviously, Danny Meyer on Friday. Tomorrow, Adam Williamowski of Street Sense is joining. So please do. And then a whole bunch of great ones for next week. You can just follow us here on Instagram, or we're also all over LinkedIn and on our website, ilcongress.com. So thanks very much, Eric. Appreciate it. We'll stay in touch and hopefully talk again soon.
Thanks a lot, Andrew.
All right, thanks. Bye, guys.